Hello, everybody. I'm going to do another video. This one on undoing merges. This is something that I do very commonly with at my job. So, yeah. Again, I'm just going to be going through this directly screen sharing this Git open source SCM book here. Um, and the reason that I'm just sort of doing a lot of these videos as just directly going through these this Git book with the corresponding sort of like diagrams and stuff is one that this Git SCM sort of openly available book is really good for just learning Git. But the second reason is just because I'm thinking of doing lessons where I actually sort of have a drawing pad or something and sort of draw out problems on there, sort of similar to like Khan Academy or something. But until I sort of until I sort of convince myself that I'm going to make a habit of doing this, I'm going to just continue. I'm going to hold off on buying a drawing pad because I am just I know that sometimes I can kind of come up with crazy ideas that I don't end up actually following through on. So until that point, I'm going to hold off on spending that money. But anyway, let's get moving here because I've been rambling for a little bit. So this is actually not directly from the published Git book that this guy has. I think his name's Scott Chacon. He actually has a blog on his Git website. He kind of uses it. I think the idea is that if he ever writes a second edition, as it says right here, he's going to basically just use these blog entries as notes, pretty much. So yeah, so undoing merges. This is something that's really commonly done in sort of like a continuous integration environment. So basically the idea is that you push changes off to a remote server and then some kind of job is kicked off, like a Jenkins build process. At least that's how I've seen it done. And of course, if you end up breaking the build, then you're going to want to undo your changes or undo your merge. So, all right, let's get into this onto how to actually undo a merge. So pretty much, here's an example diagram. So we can imagine that we're at C12 right here. So let's imagine that we want to actually undo these changes that were merged in through a merge commit, this db push cleanup. So one way to do this would actually be to revert, or not revert, reset is the Git term, even though rewind might be sort of a better conceptual way of thinking about it. But basically we can reset this branch to point to commit 3 here. And then we can remerge in rebase stat to C3, and then we can remerge in post checkout and just not merge this in again after resetting. So this is one possible way of doing this, and it works. It would work fine if everyone you're working with sort of understands how to reset and remerge branches. It can get a little bit unwieldy, and it does sort of get unwieldy because imagine that you had, I mean, right now we just have 3 branches. So imagine you have like 100 branches that were merged into master before you, since you merged in your change. So if that's the case, obviously resetting back to C3 and then remerging those like 100 branches is not something you probably want to do. So when you're working in a large code base, sort of collaborating with a lot of developers, this is probably not something you're going to want to do. So we're going to talk about a way to do it better. And this is actually a really cool way of doing this. It's reverting a merge. So this is super straightforward. It sort of works with all kinds of workflows, sort of independent of how many people you're working with. And yeah, so let's see. So we can take a look at the schematic, and sort of master is pointing at C11. And so let's imagine that you want to revert this post-checkout change. So the way that you can do this is to directly revert. So there's this git revert command. So it's basically it basically reverts a single commit. But when you revert a merge commit, it effectively reverts all commits that were part of that merge. So you can run to revert this merge commit right here, C9, and then all of the commits that sort of came in with it. You can run git revert -m 1 and then the SHA of C9. So after that, what the history will look like is it'll create this new commit that has removed these other change sets here or commits. So basically, so once you're at this point, these commits have been removed. But if you stop here, you'll run into a problem if you ever want to get these change sets or commits back into your master branch, because as you see here, if you run git merge post checkout here and try and merge these commits into master, then it'll actually tell you that it's up to date, because these commits are actually part of the history, right? So this revert actually just is sort of like a reverse cherry pick that just directly removes the commits. And when you run this merge, it'll think that these commits are still part, because they're part of the history, it'll think that these commits are already sort of merged in. It won't recognize the revert. So what you need to do to be able to solve this problem is actually revert the revert. So what you can do actually is revert the revert, basically. So the revert is technically a new commit, so with a corresponding SHA1 hash. So you can revert that hash, and what that will effectively do is it will create a new revert commit that doesn't have any of these in the history. Yes, so it will actually, well, sorry, I was sort of going in the wrong direction. What the reverting the revert does is actually just immediately reintroduces your changes to a new commit. But I'm actually going to need to think about this a little bit more to understand the workflow that I'm used to using. So, okay, well, regardless of sort of that last hiccup there, I think that you can all understand how using a revert can, to get rid of your changes, can be very helpful, as opposed to doing something like this where you basically have to reset to C3 and then basically remerge all of the other branches that you have. So I will clean this up and I will clarify in a future video, but for now, that is sort of the basics of Revert, and I'll clarify in a future video. Thanks.